Hi guys, welcome to our channel. Today, we're uncovering the real lives of medieval peasant women, from dairymaids churning butter to ale brewers crafting profitable ales, and even women mastering trades like masonry and blacksmithing. You'll journey through bustling London guild halls, sacred religious communities, and the lesser-known world of regulated Southwark courtesans. Discover how these resilient women navigated work, law, and community in a male-dominated era. If you enjoyed this deep dive into medieval life, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and drop a comment below telling us what time it is in your country right now today. As you rise before dawn, the chill of morning air greets you as you step out into the soft light filtering through dewy grass. Your hands, already calloused from years of labor, know exactly how to grip the wooden bucket beneath the cow's udder. You settle onto the low stool that's become an extension of your body and settle into a steady rhythm. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. This ancient dance of hands and livestock is your livelihood, your connection to both the land and the bustling market beyond the village gates. Working as a milkmaid on a medieval manor isn't simply about milking cows. You become part of an intricate cycle of rural life. You attend to the herd before the cornfields demand your presence, ensuring each animal is healthy, calm, and ready. As you move from cow to cow, you whisper soft reassurances, knowing that a contented beast yields richer milk. You learn to read subtle shifts in mood and posture. A raised tail or a flick of an ear can tell you if one of the animals is unwell. By the time the sun has fully climbed above the horizon, you've gathered the morning's bounty. Pale, rich milk that will sustain your own family and form the basis of all manner of dairy products. Back in the dairy, the cool, shadowed chamber adjacent to the main hall, you pour your fresh catch into a shallow stone trough. Here, the true artistry of dairy work begins. You skim the cream that rises, thick and unctuous, and set it aside for churning into butter. Each ladleful of cream deepens your understanding of patience and precision. Too much agitation yields broken, grainy butter. Too little, and the cream remains stubbornly liquid. Over a hearth warmed by glowing embers, you stir gently, coaxing the fat into clumps while the buttermilk drains away. When the butter finally gathers into a pale lump, you press it into wooden forms, pat it smooth, and wrap it in fresh linens. This golden produce, born of your careful hands, will fetch a respectable price at market, providing a modest but vital supplement to your household's income. While the butter rests, you turn your attention to cheese. You heat a portion of the milk with a watchful eye, never letting it scorch, before adding rennet harvested from the stomach of a calf. The curds begin to separate from the whey, soft white clumps floating in translucent liquid. You cut and stir with a wooden staff, encouraging the curds to firm. After draining and pressing, the young cheese rounds are salted and left to age. In a cool corner of the dairy, you stack them on wooden boards, allowing them to mature into firm, crumbly wheels. Month by month, their flavors deepen. Tangy at first, eventually mellow with a hint of the grassy pastures your cows grazed. When these wheels emerge from aging, you will load them onto carts bound for the market town, where eager customers, monks, merchants, and well-to-do townsfolk line up to purchase your handiwork. Your role extends beyond the barn and the dairy, for you are also a merchant in your own right. Twice a week, you make the trek into the nearest market. On market day, the roads are crowded with travelers, pack horses, and traders wheeling barrows laden with wares. You position your stall beside the butcher and the baker, arranging your butter and cheese so that their pale hues catch the eye of passers-by. You haggle with buyers who know a good deal when they see one, yet respect the care you have taken, the thickness of your butter, the firmness of your cheese, the purity of your milk. By sundown, after the coins have been counted and the goods carried back, you return home weary but proud, your earnings clinking in a pouch at your waist. Though the pay for your labor is modest, about 6 shillings a year around 1388, your role carries weight in the economic tapestry of the manor. Your wages, while lower than those of a plowman or a shepherd, grant you a degree of independence. You hold a secure place within the community. Your skills are essential, and your output visible. Your work nourishes families, fuels feasts, and binds village life together. And while you know that your station may never rise to the heights of the gentry, you take pride in mastering a craft that sustains the body and warms the heart. Daily life in the dairy is full of small rituals. You speak quietly to the animals, identifying each by its unique markings. You time the churning of butter to coincide with the afternoon lull, measuring every minute by the movement of the sun across the dairy's window. You share cooking tips and gossip with fellow dairymaids, overlapping shifts so that no bucket sits idle. In winter, when frost forms on the thatched roof, you wrap yourself in layers of wool and stoke the hearth in the dairy to keep the milk from freezing. In summer, when flies swarm, you hang bundles of herbs to repel them and swat away any that dare settle on the cream. Your life revolves around cycles, the seasons, the lactation of the cows, the markets, and the festivals. At midsummer, you celebrate St. John's Day with a small festival held in the manor courtyard. You trade a wheel of your best cheese for a loaf of sweet bread, and you dance in the evening glow, swapping stories of the year's harvests. As Michaelmas approaches, you prepare for the long winter, ensuring that enough butter and cheese are stored in earthenware crocks to carry your family through the cold months. You learn that survival depends on foresight. The butter churned in August must keep you nourished come January. Despite the hard work, you find solace in community. When a neighbor's cow falls ill, you offer to help with the milking. When a friend's child is born, you set aside fresh butter as a gift. Your network of fellow laborers sustains you through laughter, shared meals, and whispered confidences as you scrub milk pans and gather curds. Through this camaraderie, you glimpse solidarity beyond the individual household, a sense that your labor contributes to something greater, a collective well-being anchored in the everyday miracle of milk turning to butter, milk turning to cheese. Your expertise does not go unnoticed by the manor's steward. In exchange for extra butter and cheese, he grants you permission to keep a small patch of garden just outside the back door. There, you cultivate herbs, thyme, sage, and parsley to flavor buttermilk soups and cheese spreads. You also grow hardy vegetables, turnips, leeks, and cabbages that complement the dairy products in your family's meals. This little garden becomes your sanctuary, a place where you rest at midday, listening to the distant clang of the blacksmith's hammer and the tolling of the church bells. Though the world beyond the manor may feel distant, the dairy connects you to broader currents of trade and culture. From traveling merchants, you learn of markets in neighboring shires where dairy products command even higher prices. You hear rumors of towns where women like you form guilds to regulate quality and prices, a notion that both intrigues and alarms you. While the practicality of a guild seems appealing, you worry about the fees and restrictions such an organization might impose. For now, you remain an independent artisan, answering to the rhythms of the cows rather than the mandates of a distant authority. Your hands remember every aspect of your craft. They know the weight of the butter form, the resistance of the curd under the press, the temperature that coaxed whey from curd. They know the smell of fresh milk warmed by the hearth, the sheen of churned butter glistening in candlelight, the cracked surface of a well-aged cheese. Over time, you teach apprentices, often younger women who aspire to learn your trade. You guide their hands at the udder and at the churn, offering gentle corrections as they fumble. In teaching, you find purpose beyond your own labor. You ensure that the knowledge of milkmaid craftsmanship continues, even as generations change. In moments of rest, you reflect on your path. You realize that your identity is woven from many threads: laborer, artisan, merchant, mother, friend. You take pride in the tangible results of your work: the nourishing butter that spreads on fresh bread at dawn, the savory cheese that flavors evening stews. You know that your contributions sustain not only your household, but the wider community. The milkmaid's craft underpins both survival and celebration. In every churn, every press, every sale, you affirm your place in the world. As dusk settles, you return to the dairy for one last check. You skim any remaining cream, collect leftover whey for pigs, and wipe down equipment to prevent spoilage. You close the heavy wooden door against the cool night air, knowing that tomorrow the cycle will begin again. With satisfaction, you wash your hands, feeling the ache in your muscles as a reminder of a day's honest work. You light a candle, sit by the hearth, and savor a crust of bread dipped in your own fresh butter. In that simple bite, you taste the culmination of countless hours of effort, and you know that, despite the hardships, you have mastered a craft both humble and essential. This is your world as a milkmaid in medieval times: early mornings in misty fields, careful rituals in the dairy, journeys to market, gardening at the manor's edge, and the bonds you forge with animals and neighbors alike. It is a life shaped by rhythm, skill, and resilience, one that demands strength, patience, and unwavering attention to detail. Yet it is also a life rich in purpose, community, and the quiet triumph of transforming daily toil into sustenance and prosperity. In these measures of butter and cheese, you find your place, your pride, and your story. As you step into the warm, stone-walled bakehouse just as dawn's first rays filter through the narrow windows, your senses awaken. The lingering scent of last night's embers melds with the faint, tangy aroma of sourdough starter resting in its earthenware crock. Your hands, dusted in fine, pale flour, move with practiced ease as you knock the starter down, fold in fresh water, and feed it with a handful of coarse ground wheat. This living mixture, your key to well-leavened loaves, bubbles and grows under your gentle coaxing, promising the spring and lift that sets your bread apart in the crowded market square. Before the sun fully climbs, you have already heaped mounds of mixed dough onto your sturdy wooden bench. Each lump is a story: the wheat harvested by neighbors' sweaty hands in the summer fields, the millstone's rhythmic grind at the local mill, the grain's journey from stalk to granary to flour. You punch down the dough and begin the kneading process, stretching and folding until the surface becomes supple and smooth. As your palms glide across the soft mass, you think back to the butter and cheese you carried to market yesterday, how their golden hues and savory tang drew eager buyers. Today's bread will weave into that tapestry of sustenance, nourishing families at dawn, with slices slathered in fresh butter, toasted over hearth embers. The temperature of the bakehouse is crucial. You lean close to the hearth, feeling the warmth that will coax the dough to rise. You cover each gentle mound with damp cloths, securing moisture and warmth. While the loaves rest, you tend to the fire. Too fierce, and your oven bricks will crack. Too low, and the hearth won't hold heat long enough to bake the bread through. You select seasoned hardwood, oak for a steady burn, birch for a quick flare, and arrange it in the arched oven mouth, coaxing bright coals to life. The glow spreads, illuminating the rough-hewn rafters above, and you know that soon your dough will transform in that enclosed, fiery chamber. When the leavened dough has doubled and the hearth is ready, you brush away lingering ash with a bundle of twigs. You slide each scored loaf into the oven using a long wooden peel, the blade dusted with flour to prevent sticking. The gentle hiss as the moist dough meets hot stone feels like a crisp promise. You retreat to the bench, wiping your brow, then smooth cloths over newly weighed portions of dough, preparing for the next batch. Your rhythm forms a quiet cadence: knead, rest, bake, repeat. With each cycle, your arms tire and your mind drifts, imagining the burst of steam as each loaf cracks open, revealing tender crumb beneath a golden crust. By mid-morning, the bakehouse has filled with neighbors, drawn by the promise of fresh bread. They wait patiently outside the half door, exchanging gossip and garden tips. A woman whose husband tilled the fields asks if you've noticed a new weed in the north meadow. An old man with a bent back compliments your crust's color. You beam, proud of your work. The loaf you sell bears not just flour and water, but the echo of your skill, the subtle variations in heat and humidity you've mastered over countless dawns. You barter around for a bundle of herbs and tender strips for a dozen eggs, exchanges that knit your household into the wider community's fabric. Guild regulations govern your craft: weight, purity, and price strictly defined. Under medieval statute, your loaves must weigh the full 10 ounces, and you must not dilute the dough with cheaper grains. Violations can lead to public penance or fines, and you recall a fellow baker who was forced to stand in the pillory for selling underweight bread. You guard your reputation jealously. Each batch is tested on the scale and by the bite. A loaf too dense signals underproofing, too pale, and the fire wasn't hot enough. You adjust the water content, the mixing time, the hearth temperature. Over time, you have honed an instinct for perfect crumb and crackling crust, a skill that earns loyal customers even when prices rise. In the corner of the bakehouse, you maintain a small shelf of experimental mixtures: rye, for a darker, denser loaf; spelt for a hearty, nutty flavor; barley for a bread that bears the tang of harvest barley. These specialty loaves attract curious merchants from the market towns, eager to sample novel flavors and bring them to wealthier patrons. Through these interactions, you learn of trends beyond your village, towns where exotic spices like caraway or coriander seed are mixed into bread, noble households that favor delicate manchette loaves made from the finest white flour. While you lack the means to replicate those in large quantities, you delight in sharing small batches of your coarser, scented loaves with friends, imagining how a hint of caraway would transform morning porridge. Your hands move from peel to bench, flouring the surface for the next batch, when a fellow artisan hurries in bearing a parcel of dried hops, left over from an ale brewer's season. You accept the surprise gift with a nod of thanks, envisioning a new kind of beer bread to sell alongside your traditional loaves. You fold the hop blossoms into the dough, picturing the light bitterness they'll lend. A few days later, you present the first hop-infused rounds at market. They sell out almost instantly, the unique aroma sparking exclamations from curious bakers and tavern keepers. These moments of innovation give you pride, and you tuck a few coins away to save for more adventurous ingredients. Evenings in the bakehouse carry their own rituals. As the last loaves emerge from the cooling racks, you pat them gently, admiring the glossy sheen from an egg wash or a dusting of bran. You stack them on wide boards, covering them to retain warmth for early buyers or to keep moisture at bay before you begin your nightly cleaning. You sweep the floor, wash the peel and bowls in cool water, and empty the hearth of spent coals, recycling what you can to dry herbs in the fire's lingering heat. You inhale the final waft of comforting warmth before extinguishing the small lanterns that lit your work. The bread you bake sustains families, children dipping slices in honey at breakfast, travelers gripping halves for lunch, laborers wrapping hunks in cloth for their midday meal. Your loaves appear at weddings and funerals alike, at harvest feasts and fasting days, forming a constant thread through the tapestry of communal life. You have learned that the simplest sustenance often bears the deepest resonance, and that your role as baker grants you quiet authority, the ability to nourish, to comfort, and to delight with each loaf. Yet the life of a baker is not without hardship. When grain prices spike after a poor harvest, you find yourself scrambling to maintain quality while keeping prices affordable. You confer with millers, seeking grain of sufficient coarseness yet fair cost. You ration flour, stretching it with a portion of barley or oats, mindful of guild tolerance. When storms flood the mill race and the stones sit idle, you borrow against future harvests. Your family feels the pinch. Warm stew thickened with stale bread becomes a common supper. Still, you persist, knowing that after every lean season comes plenty, and the cycle of sowing and reaping continues. In winter's harsh grip, the bakehouse transforms into a solace against frost and snow. The hearth's glow cuts the chill, and the aroma of rising dough warms bone and spirit. You modify the recipe, less water, more warmth, longer proof time. You experiment with adding bits of fat, lard saved from butcher's scraps, to enrich the crumb and extend freshness. These richer loaves carry a small luxury into the darkest months, and customers willingly trade extra pennies for a taste of comfort. On festival days like Christmas or Candlemas, you craft special gingerbread, sweetened with honey and spiced with cinnamon scraps obtained through trade. Decorating them with simple patterns, you weave joy into the cold season. Your status in the village grows. Though you are not a guild master, you hold informal teaching sessions for young women eager to learn the baker's art. Under your supervision, they mix starter, shape small bread rolls, and learn to read the oven's heat by the color of the bricks. Through mentoring, you preserve traditions and gain a sense of legacy. When a traveling scribe visits, he praises your keen understanding of dough elasticity and fermentation. He sketches notes in his parchment journal, tales that might one day find their way into manuscripts, preserving for posterity the voices of women artisans like you. The market day arrives again, and you load your cart with loaves nested in woven baskets, dusted with fresh linen to protect from wind-blown chaff. You greet fellow vendors, vegetable growers, fishmongers, leather workers, trading pleasantries and warnings of approaching rain. You set up near the meat stalls, knowing that fresh bread accompanies cuts of mutton or beef. As buyers gather, you weigh each sale precisely, your small brass scales clicking softly. A merchant from the town offers to buy in bulk for his tavern. You negotiate a fair price, mindful not to undercut your village customers. The deal helps you plan ahead. Next week, you'll mix larger batches to meet his needs, ensuring steady work for your apprentices and yourself. Even as you bake, your mind wanders to law, custom, and community. You attend quarterly moot meetings in the manor's great hall, where steward and bailiff enforce bread laws and resolve disputes. When loaves go missing, or prices fluctuate unfairly, you stand ready to present your ledger, carefully recorded sales and purchases. You advocate for fair measures, reminding officials that surplus regulation can stifle innovation and burden small artisans. Your voice, once timid among greater landholders, carries weight through your reputation for honesty and skill. By the time dusk settles, you have sold most of today's loaves and earned enough coins to sustain your household. barley for the pigs, wax for candles, fabric to mend clothes. You walk home under a sky painted with dusk's purples and pinks, the scent of wood smoke from cottage chimneys blending with the lingering aroma of bread. You carry a small basket of unsold rolls for your family's supper, savoring their soft, warm interior as you recount the day's successes and challenges. In the quiet of your hearth-lit home, the final chapters of the day unfold. You slice a loaf and spread a thick pat of your own butter atop it, the flavors reunited from two crafts you have mastered. As you sit beside your children, sharing the fruits of your labor, you feel the ties that bind to your land, to your community, to the ancient practices handed down through generations. You understand that your work as a baker does more than fill bellies. It sustains traditions, shapes social bonds, and nourishes bodies and spirits alike. Tomorrow, you will rise again before dawn, tending to starter and hearth, kneading dough and fueling fires. The cycle continues, guided by experience and innovation. Yet through every challenge, fluctuating grain prices, harsh winters, guild constraints, you find purpose in creation. Each loaf you bake is a testament to resilience, skill, and the simple, profound power of bread. In its crust and crumb, you shape not only sustenance but community, weaving your own story into the fabric of medieval life. As you step from the bakehouse into the crisp morning air, the scent of wood smoke and warm bread still clinging to your cloak, you make your way across the yard toward the low-slung brewhouse. The rough-hewn door swings open at your touch, revealing dim walls blackened by years of soot. Inside, the hearth's embers glow faintly, awaiting the flame you will coax to life. Just as dough yields to your practiced hands, so too will grain and water transform under your direction, becoming the golden ale that sustains the laborers at dusk and brings communities together in quiet taverns. You gather sacks of malted barley from the corner where they rest on straw, grain husks whispering beneath your fingers. The grain was kilned just days ago, its sugars unlocked, ready to feed the yeast that will set your brew dancing. You pour the barley into a large wooden tub, your mash tun, its staves swollen with the moisture of previous batches. Lifting the churned basket of hot stones from the embers, you plunge them into the water, feeling the hiss as heat seeps through. Carefully, you stir the mash, watching as the pale water darkens to a rich amber. This is your canvas. Each degree of warmth, each handful of malt contributes to flavor, body, and strength. As the mash rests, you tend to the fire, raking coals to feed the hearth and adjusting vents to regulate heat. You recall how, only yesterday, you slid loaves onto brick floors and closed the oven door. Now you work with the same elemental forces, fire and water, shaping sustenance in different forms. Steam curls from the mash tun, carrying sweet, nutty aromas that speak of distant fields and long afternoons under the sun. You inhale deeply, imprinting the scent on your senses. It will guide you through long hours of stirring and sampling. When the sugars have fully dissolved into the water, judged by the clear sheen of the wort, you strain the liquid through a coarse cloth into the kettle. The spent grains, still fragrant, you set aside to mix into a hearty porridge for the manor's pigs. Nothing goes to waste under your watch. Your brew kettle, a heavy iron cauldron, sits above roaring flames. You boil the wort, skimming foam that rises like pale clouds, removing husky bitterness and impurities. As it churns, you measure hops, bittering hops for strength, aromatic hops for floral notes, and drop them in at intervals, timing each addition to balance flavor and preservation. The hiss of steam, the clink of iron tools, and the hiss of hops are your morning chorus. While the kettle boils, you prepare yeast, carefully saved from a previous batch. You mix it with warm water and a pinch of flour to revive the living culture. It bubbles and foams, alive with promise. This yeast, a microscopic troop of tireless workers, will consume sugars and create alcohol and the subtle esters that distinguish your ale. You guard it as you would a cherished pet, using wooden ladles and sand-coated crocks to keep metal contamination at bay. Each step, each vessel, must be pristine. A fickle contamination could spoil weeks of labor. When the wort has boiled its allotted time, an hour or more, depending on the strength you seek, you draw it off the fire. Large wooden trusses overhead support ropes and pulleys that help you lift the kettle's edge, tilting the liquid into a cool tun. The transformation begins as you stir and aerate, encouraging the yeast to mingle. You test the temperature with your wrist, knowing that too hot wort will kill the yeast, too cool and the brew will stagnate. At the perfect moment, about as warm as your own skin, you add the yeast, stirring gently until the amber liquid shimmer is covered in a thin head of froth. You cover the tun with heavy cloths and leave it in the brewery's quiet corner. There, in the gentle gloom, the magic unfolds. Over the next day and night, the yeast feasts, gasping out carbon dioxide that bubbles up like tiny fountains. You check periodically, tasting with a small dipper, first sweet, then coming alive with the tang of fermentation, then warming your tongue with the promise of spirits to come. You note the days on the wall. The turning of the moon guides you, for ale brewed at full moon ferments most vigorously, old wives' tales claim, and you have learned some measure of truth in such lore. As the brew softens into ale, you move on to other tasks, confident that this batch will soon join the barrels stacked on stone shelves, lined with clean straw to cushion them. You wash your tools and sweep the floor, mindful of spilled malt that might invite unwanted critters. The brewery's half-light feels sacred, a space where you both create and commune with nature's quiet alchemy. When the ale has fully fermented, weeks sometimes for a strong double ale, shorter for a session drink, you transfer it to casks. Leaning over the stave, you sample to ensure clarity and depth of flavor. Malt sweetness balanced by hop bitterness. A gentle warmth without harsh alcohol burn. You prick your thumb, letting a bead of ale form, swirling it in your palm, inhaling its subtle fruitiness. Pear, apple, clove, born of yeast's hidden artistry. 99 times correct, 1 time ruinous, and you have learned to trust your senses above all else. The casks you set in a cool cellar beneath the bakehouse, dark and damp, where they rest until market day. There, alongside your butter and bread, ale finds its place. Villagers queue for a taste, mugs clinking, and faces brightening at the first sip. Laborers wet their throats before heading out to fields. Merchants barter over breakfast rounds. Weddings toast your mellow brew. Funerals mark sorrow with a cup's small comfort. You stand behind your stall, arms crossed over a woolen gown, as laughter and conversation swirl around you. Your ale opens talk of harvest prospects, rivalries between neighboring manors, and tales of travelers passing through distant towns. Competition among brewers is fierce. Medieval statutes limit brewing to guild members in some towns, but in the countryside, you operate by custom rather than strict regulation. Still, the steward of the manor inspects your brewery on occasion, checking weights of nethers, wooden pints, and the strength of your ale. You entertain him with the warmth reserved for a gentle sunbeam. He samples a barrel, nods approvingly at its clarity, and approves a toll exemption for an upcoming festival. You breathe easier, knowing that no fines loom over you and that your reputation remains secure. In winter, when frost bites deep, brewing becomes a balm against biting cold. You adapt your recipes, more hops for preservation, extra malt for body, and adjust fermentation times to the chill in the cellar. Each barrel rests in staves sealed by pine resin, keeping the ale from souring. On New Year's Eve, you tap the first cask of Yule Ale, dark and spiced with ginger and cinnamon, luxuries you procure through itinerant merchants. The first pull of the peg floods the room with sweet spiced vapors, and you serve mugs to your neighbors, joining in ancient rites of feasting and renewal. Brewing is hazardous. Scalding mash, slippery floors, and the ever-present risk of fires when sparks escape the hearth. You bear a scar on your forearm from a kettle slip, a zigzag of healed flesh you barely notice now, but it reminds you to respect the power you wield. Brewing demands courage and care in equal measure, and you teach apprentices to handle hot iron and angry steam with calm eyes and steady hands. You show them how to read the swirl of bubbles on the surface, how to adjust the fire beneath the mash tun, and how to discern off flavors that betray contamination. In your guidance, they learn not just a trade, but a stewardship of the manor's well-being. Through brewing, you connect to wider networks. Merchants from town speak of alehouses opening in cities, of taverns where ale is taxed heavily, of guilds that set prices and mediate disputes. You dream of joining such an organization, but worry that dues and regulations would squeeze your independence. For now, you are content to remain the manor's alewife, free to experiment and guided by your own instincts, bound to the rhythms of grain and yeast rather than the statutes of distant magistrates. On market days, you roll your barrel-laden cart through mud-slick lanes alongside vegetable growers and cloth merchants. You stop at the innkeeper's booth first. He buys a small barrel to put on tap that night. You haggle over price. He seeks a discount for quantity. You seek enough coin to pay for new hop sacks and repairs to your mash tun. The deal struck. You move to the communal well to fill jugs with fresh water that will dilute your ale slightly, making it lighter for everyday drinking. Then, you clean up, smoothing straw on the cart bed to cushion barrels destined for neighbors whose cellars lack space. At home, you keep a modest workshop where you maintain wooden tools, mash paddles, beer spoons, barrels, and taps. You replace cracked staves in hoops and retar rickety joints. Your hands know the curve of each tool, the grain of each hoop, the right tension of the iron band. When craftsmen come through seeking work, you enlist them to shore up your equipment before the busy season. In exchange, you brew them a special batch of small ale as thanks, rich with caramel malt, and a hint of honey brought from local bees. Ale brings people together. Neighbors gather in your yard to help lift heavy barrels. Children scamper about chasing stray heads of barley, and elders lean on crutches, speaking of drinks they remember from youth. Celebrations of saints and cycles of planting and harvest orbit around your barrels. During planting season, a flagon of light ale heralds the sowing of fields. At harvest, a darker brew marks abundance. Through it all, your brewery stands as a hearth for communal life, an extension of both your skill and your generosity. When the day wanes and the last frothy mug is drained, you seal the brewery door and extinguish the lantern's flame. You carry a small dipper back to the bakehouse, where it will serve tomorrow's dough, and perhaps tomorrow's ale test. You wash your hands in cool spring water, letting the grain dust wash away. In the hearth's glow, you sit with family, later than usual, sharing fresh bread and the dregs of cask ale. Conversation flows. Your children ask about the brew's flavor. Your spouse recounts news from the fields, and you all taste the fruits of your labor together. Your life as an alewife is woven into a larger tapestry of community and craft. It demands patience through fermentation, strength to tend fires, and creativity to blend ingredients that please both simple tastes and refined palates. Yet it also offers joy in shared laughter, solidarity in rough seasons, and the satisfaction of mastering an art as old as civilization. In every wooden barrel, every foaming pour, every resonant cheer over a mug raised high, you see the impact of your work, nourishing bodies and forging bonds in a world where women's hands shape not only hearth and home, but the very spirits that lift the heart. As you leave the alehouse behind and step onto the busy cobbled street, the turn of your ankle reminds you that every surface you navigate bears the weight of centuries' worth of footsteps. The air is thick with the mingled scents of smoke, horse dung, and fresh-cut timber. In this bustling quarter of London, every trade hums in harmony. Here, your hands find a new purpose, shaping stone and iron where once they churned butter, kneaded dough, and coaxed ale from grain. You shoulder your tools, a mallet, a chiseling hammer, and a measure, feeling the reassurance of their familiar heft. Today, you will join the masons rebuilding the city's walls, carving out not only stone, but your own place in a world that so often insists your station be small. The master mason nods to you as you approach the scaffold. His broad shoulders and grizzled beard mark him as a veteran of many campaigns, to Normandy, perhaps, or to the great cathedral at Canterbury. He recognizes your skill, a widow's privilege, they call it, the right to carry on a husband's craft. But you need no license beyond your own steady hand and unwavering eye. You set mud-splattered boots onto the plank and inhale the sharp tang of lime mortar. The stone before you, a massive block of Caen limestone, waits to be shaped into a voussoir linking arch to pier. You lay calloused fingers against its cool surface, tracing the curve you memorized in the master's plan. Working alongside fellow masons, men who once scoffed at the notion of a woman wielding the chisel, you find that skill earns respect more readily than gender. A bead of sweat drips down your temple as you drive the hammer against the chisel's edge, the sharp snap of stone releasing ring after ring of dust and tiny shards. You move slowly, deliberately. Too much force, and you'll shatter the face. Too little, and progress stalls. Each tap is measured, each incision planned. You pause to sight down the course, ensuring the block's angle aligns with the spring of the arch. When it matches, you smile. This moment of triumph is yours alone. As the sun climbs, you descend to the courtyard to refill your water skin and take a crust of rye bread. The Guildhall bell tolls another hour, and you recall your baker's schedule. Dough must rest at the precise moment the master glazier finishes his lead work. You sip cold water and watch apprentices hauling lime up the winding stairs. A young man with ink on his tunic offers you a bow, a scribe come to record the progress for the cathedral's ledger. He compliments the precision of your cuts, surprised that such skill could come from slender hands. You shrug and crack open the bread, buttered thin with your own churned produce, proof that your past labors continue to nourish you, even as your present work reshapes the city. Returning aloft, you set about shaping the next stone. As you work, your mind drifts to Agnes Ramsay, the woman who built tombs for kings, whose name you heard whispered in the master's quarters. You wonder if her chisels sang as yours do now, if her fingers felt the same rush when a block fit perfectly into place. In the dim coolness of the scaffold, you are connected to a lineage of women whose talents defied convention, even when history forgot their names. Here, on these stones, your own story finds permanence, a carved signature hidden beneath centuries of mortar, waiting for future hands to uncover. Midday brings a pause for prayer at the nearby chapel. You wipe stone dust from your face and join the line entering through the heavy wooden doors. Light filters through stained glass, illuminating colored shards on stone floor, and you kneel beside craftsmen from other trades, blacksmiths, carpenters, weavers. You offer a silent prayer for steady fingers, for the strength to lift heavy stones without falter, and for protection against the petty jealousies that sometimes flare when a woman takes a man's place. The officiant's chant echoes in your chest, and when the service ends, you feel fortified. Faith, like mortar, binds this community together. Back at the work site, your focus shifts to the ironworkers carving out straps and anchors to bind stone courses. The blacksmith's forge lies across the yard, where a steady plume of smoke marks his domain. You cross the courtyard, carrying your mallet, and pause at the heavy iron door. Inside, sparks dance like fireflies, and the scent of heated metal fills the air. The smith looks up from hammering a glowing bracket, and his broad grin welcomes you. He knows you understand the necessity of iron. Without his work, your stone arches would crumble. He taps the metal, releasing a final ring, and hands you a strap cut to length. Together, you position it against the stone you shaped earlier. You drill a hole with a brace and bit, your firm grip guiding the bit into the rock, while he wedges the iron through and secures it with a punch. You hear the echoing resonance as metal meets stone, each strike setting the piece in place. When you step back, the block sits firm, its weight distributed through flesh and steel alike. In that moment, you appreciate how trades merge: mason and smith, woman and tool, stone and iron all working in concert. Throughout the afternoon, you move from scaffold to scaffold, alternating between carving ornamental moldings and setting ready-cut blocks. Villagers pause to watch you at work. Mothers lifting children for a better view, merchants hurrying their carts, street urchins craning their necks. Some cross themselves, whispering blessings, as if a woman's proficiency were a miracle. You laugh softly to yourself, thinking all that's required is dedication, practice, and the willingness to risk a bruised knuckle or a broken chisel. Late in the day, the foreman orders a repose. No more heavy lifting until morning. You descend the ladder and gather by the fire pit with fellow laborers. Men crack ale from wooden mugs. You raise yours in greeting. Conversation drifts from building techniques to rumors of a new contract on the Thames embankment, to the steward's plans for repairing the city gate. You share news of your bread and ale, offering your latest innovations: hop-infused barley bread, spiced ginger ale, and the others nod appreciatively. They know your creativity extends beyond stone. Your hands have shaped every element of communal life. As dusk falls, torches are lit along the walls you helped raise. Their flickering glow reveals the rough-hewn surface and the smooth curves of the arch you perfected. Pausing beneath your work, you run your palm along the mortar lines, feeling the cool resistance. Here, at the intersection of skill and perseverance, you see the culmination of your day's labor. Your reputation grows not because you are different, but because you excel. You are mason, smith, baker, brewer, a woman whose versatility refuses to be confined. On the walk home, the city's sounds shift to evening: laughter from taverns, the tolling of distant bells, the tramp of patrol guards. You thread through narrow alleys until you reach your modest home behind the guild hall, where tools hang above the hearth alongside churn and peel. There, you rest your aching limbs and light a small lamp. Your hands, still marked by stone dust and iron filings, reach for parchment and quill. It's time to record tomorrow's designs, to map out the curvature of the next arch, to note where to source fresh lime. The ledger lies open, inviting you to continue the lineage of women who have kept the city's stones true and standing. In the hush of your workspace, you reflect on the day's work. How mortar and sweat have bound you to the living city. How each carved block carries the echo of your presence. You imagine future generations tracing the mortar lines, marveling that a woman's hand steadied this arch. And as you lay down to rest, the ache in your muscles reminds you that tomorrow you will rise again, ready to lift, to carve, to set, to forge. In every chisel strike, every iron bind, you shape not only stone, but the very narrative of possibility for women in a world that so often underestimates them. Here, in the heart of medieval London, you are both architect and artisan, building a legacy as enduring as the stones themselves. As you step off the scaffold and brush the last granules of mortar from your gown, you pause to take in the bustle of London's winding streets. The city's heartbeat thrums all around you, merchants haggling at stalls, town criers announcing royal edicts, and rolling wheels of carts laden with wares from distant shires. Your hands, still warm from shaping stone and metal, now guide you toward the great Guildhall, where the civic and legal life of the realm converges. As you cross the threshold into its cavernous chamber, you feel the weight of both history and possibility settle on your shoulders. Here, your voice and your rights are negotiated alongside those of noble knights and wealthy merchants. Inside, the echo of your footsteps mingles with the soft murmur of huddled groups, drapers debating the quality of Flemish wool, coopers pressed into conversation with vintners over duty rates, and goldsmiths poring over the latest statutes on alloy purity. You find yourself drawn toward the dais where the aldermen hold court. The Lord Mayor presides in resplendent robes, a symbol of the city's semi-autonomy under the crown. You recall that London's charter grants its citizens unique privileges, the right to self-governance, to enact local ordinances, and to adjudicate commercial disputes. These are not mere abstractions to you. They shape the very work that feeds your family and defines your standing in the community. Drawing near, you overhear a case about a stolen ledger from a silk merchant. The accused, a journeyman weaver, argues his innocence. His master insists on punishing him severely to set an example. You feel a familiar tension. The law favors property and profit, yet you know the value of mercy and common sense. When the bailiff calls for witnesses, you step forward. The guild steward recognizes you, a craftsman whose reputation for fairness extends beyond the workshop. You speak calmly, describing how you saw the weaver handle the ledger only to return it moments later, the ink smudged by accidental rain. Your testimony sways the assembly, and the weaver is acquitted with a caution rather than punished. A hush falls, then gratitude rises, and you realize that justice in this hall operates not only on statutes, but on shared trust. Leaving the courtroom, you wander down a corridor lined with painted heraldic shields, each representing one of London's great guilds. You pause beneath the arms of the Mercer's Company, silk merchants whose robes you once carried to market, and remember how they once denied your plea for entry. Today, however, your successes as a stonecutter, baker, brewer, and mason have earned you the status of freeman. You can now petition for membership in a guild of your choosing, a right that grants greater protection and access to resources. Though you carry no purse heavy with gold, you hold something just as valuable: a network of allies across trades, forged through honest labor and shared purpose. Stepping into the sunlight, you make your way to the Royal Courts of Justice at Westminster. Here, matters of civil law, contracts, debts, inheritances, are weighed under the gaze of royal judges. You clutch a small bundle of documents, receipts for the sale of your latest cheese wheels, an agreement to supply the Crown's kitchens with ale, and a deed for the little garden plot you tend by the manor's edge. The Chancellor's seals glimmer on parchment and wax, affirming your rights and binding obligations. You present your case for overdue payment on a recent shipment. The clerk examines your receipts and nods, scheduling a hearing to resolve the matter. Though you must travel to Westminster by cart, the journey through crowded thoroughfares and across the Thames reminds you how your work, dairy, bread, ale, stone, intertwines with the kingdom's grand tapestry. Back in the crowded lanes of London, you thread between pilgrims bound for the Abbey at St. Bartholomew's and parishioners heading to Mass at St. Paul's Cathedral. The city's religious communities pulse with their own rhythms. The Augustinian canons feeding the sick, the Franciscan friars preaching in the market square, and the Knights Hospitaller distributing alms to the poor. You pause at a charity chest in the church aisle and drop a small coin, remembering your own days of hardship as a young widow. Now, whenever you turn a profit, you reserve a portion for those in need, an unspoken contract between artisan and neighbor. Your path leads you to the Jewish ghetto beyond Aldgate, where the narrow lanes hum with activity. Moneylenders at work behind shuttered windows, scholars studying between prayer services, and families hurrying with baskets of provisions. London's Jewish community, though vulnerable to royal whims and popular suspicion, plays a vital role in the city's economy, providing credit when Christian usury laws bind other hands. You once borrowed from a Jewish lender to finance your first batch of hop-infused ale. The transaction was handled with discreet efficiency, and the interest repaid punctually. As you pass, a pale-faced clerk bows politely, recalling your punctuality. You nod in acknowledgement, acknowledging the complex interdependence that sustains the city. Further on, you reach the Inns of Court, Inner and Middle Temple, hallowed halls where aspiring lawyers study and pursue justice. You admire the ivy-clad walls and arcaded cloisters, envisioning the parchments of law that guide both king and commoner. The temple's gardens bloom with medicinal herbs once grown by the Templars. You recall the lore of these plants, nurtured in your own herb garden, and consider their healing value in ale's bitter wash or in the soothing broth of cheese and onion soup. Across the lawns, a group of law students pore over treatises, discovering rights that you wield daily in guild meetings and city courts. A shout from a nearby square draws your attention. A public proclamation reads that the city walls will be repaired once more, funded by a new murage toll on goods entering through the gates. You understand the necessity. London's defenses must hold against foreign foes or insurrection, but you wince at the burden on lowly traders. You join a small delegation of artisans petitioning the mayor. You propose that guilds provide labor or materials in lieu of some toll, easing the strain on merchants. The alderman considers your suggestion thoughtfully, then agrees to take it to the council. You sense the power of collective advocacy, how a few determined voices can shape policy. As the sun dips low, you cross the Thames again, the wooden drawbridge swaying underfoot. On the southern bank lies Southwark, beyond the keep of Winchester Palace, where Southwark's courtesans, derisively dubbed Winchester Geese, plied licit trade under the bishop's license. You steer clear of their quarter, but you respect the complex arrangements that allowed these women to live by their wits and bodies in a world where few options existed. Their licenses required practice under supervision, and when attitudes shifted, they could seek absolution through marriage or penance. You think of your own resilience, how in every chapter of your life you carved out a place where none seemed possible. Night falls, and lanterns flare along narrow lanes. You pause outside the Guildhall once more, now empty, but for the glow of torchlight behind its stained windows. Inside, bylaws await ratification, accounts ledgered for the year's trade, and disputes queued for tomorrow's hearing. You feel the pulse of civic life in every carved capital and painted beam. You remember the first time you entered this space, uncertain, newcomer, seeking justice for a stolen ledger, and compare it to now, when you speak with confidence, your testimony shaping community outcomes. Before you return home, you stop at a humble alehouse tucked between two timber-framed dwellings. The sign bears a carved tankard and a churn, symbols of your dual trades. Inside, the warmth and murmur of conversation welcome you. You order a mug of the pale ale you brewed under the full moon, its flavor crisp and reassuring. Nearby, a group of apprentices share stories of new projects, a bridge arch in need of repair, a charity bake sale to fund an orphaned child's dowry, a communal brew to celebrate the mayor's re-election. You sip slowly, tasting hints of hops and hearth, and you feel at home in the patchwork of trades, faiths, and offices that make London both formidable and familiar. When at last you rise to go, your neighbors see only a woman leaving a tavern late at night, but you carry much more. The knowledge of statutes and charters, the soft thud of gavel echoes, the warmth of communal prayer, and the flicker of countless lanterns guiding you along packed streets. You step into the night, cloaked not only in wool, but in the civic rights your labors have earned. Each day you navigate law and custom as deftly as you once shaped dough or poured ale, and in doing so, you shape London itself. Home at last, you settle by the hearth in your modest dwelling. Tools hang above in neat order: chisel, peel, churn, bridle bit, all reminders of trades you've mastered. Scrolls and charters lie on a small table beside your stool, transcripts of council meetings and copies of guild regulations. With flickering candlelight, you dip your quill and record the day's petitions, noting decisions made and drafting proposals for tomorrow's audience. Your writing is careful and deliberate, letters looped and precise, reflecting a mind keen to preserve rights and responsibilities in equal measure. As dawn approaches, you lay down your quill. Outside, the faint tolling of a distant bell signals a new day. You close your eyes, comforted by knowledge that your place in this city is secure, fashioned by your own hands through labor and advocacy. Here, at the intersection of craft and community, you've carved more than stone. You've carved a legacy of participation, resilience, and shared governance. And as you drift toward sleep, you carry with you the promise of tomorrow's work. The next petition to draft, the next statute to uphold, the next neighbor to aid. In London's vast tapestry, your thread shines clear, a testament to how a woman's agency can shape not just her household's fate, but the fortunes of an entire city. You wake before dawn once again, though today your feet carry you not toward the dairy or the bakehouse, but down a narrow lane where the gentle lantern glow spills from the arched doorway of St. Bartholomew's Hospital. As you step inside, the hush of stone corridors greets you, interrupted only by soft chants drifting from the chapel. Here, your hands, so accustomed to churn, knead, mash, and chisel, now soothe fevered brows and bind wounds, serving as both healer and confidant to the sick and weary who arrive at the hospital gates. Upon entering the great ward, you pause to lace up your sturdy leather slippers and smooth the simple woolen gown that marks you as a lay sister. The Augustinian canons entrust you with the care of patients whose needs range from simple aches to dire fevers. You move from one straw-stuffed mattress to the next, murmuring gentle reassurances. Rest now, and I will return with broth. Or, sleep, friend, while I fetch more clean water. Each patient is numbered on a tally hung by their bedside. Sir Reginald of Kent, who limps on a gout-swollen ankle. Mother Eleanor, cradling her ailing infant, Brother Oswin, whose cough rattles like dry leaves in autumn. Your heart aches for them all, but you steel yourself, knowing that your compassion must remain unwavering. A small fire burns in the hearth, and you kneel beside it to heat water for poultices. You retrieve a scrap of linen and dip it into a brass basin, wringing the cloth until it sinks into the steaming water. You add bruised herbs, sage for healing, lavender for calm, yarrow for staunching blood, into the cloth bundle and bind it gently to the swollen limb of a quarrels-wounded soldier. He winces, but when you whisper that this ointment will ease his pain, his fingers grip yours in silent gratitude. This trust, you realize, spans faith and class alike. Knight and peasant, cleric and merchant's child, all wear the same threads of vulnerability. With the morning light filtering through the high windows, you carry fresh broth on a wooden tray, each bowl balanced with practiced ease. The gentle clink of bowls against tray planks is a familiar melody. You kneel by Mother Eleanor's bedside and coax the spoon to her lips. The infant fusses, green with fever, but calms as the sweet barley broth slips down her throat. Eleanor's eyes meet yours, relief shining through exhaustion. You promise to return at twilight, then move on to refill water skins and change soiled bandages in the next cubicle. By mid-morning, the infirmary courtyard fills with the comings and goings of novices carrying firewood, acolytes lighting candles, and lay workers delivering linen from the monastery's laundry. You pause to greet Brother Aelred, who oversees the hospital's herb garden, a walled haven just beyond the cloister. Under his guidance, you harvested mint and marjoram yesterday, weaving their fragrant sprigs into healing salves. Today, you tend the slippery path between rows of valerian and comfrey, inhaling the green scent of growing things. You cut fresh stalks of feverfew to infuse in oil, gathering bundles for the apothecary's press. Your role at St. Bartholomew's extends beyond bedside nursing. You are entrusted with midwifery for expectant mothers who cannot return to their village. When a noblewoman arrives in labor, escorted by clad families and hushed attendants, you prepare the birthing chamber, a curtained bed strewn with fresh linen, a brazier with warming embers, and bowls of cooled water scented with rose petals. You instruct the women who will assist you, neighbors taken in by the hospital, to hold linen cloths and offer steady support. As contractions begin, you remain calm and encouraging, guiding the mother's breaths and pressing warm compresses to ease her pain. Hours pass, punctuated by the infant's first wail, confirming a safe arrival. Tears of relief flood the mother's cheeks, and you tuck her and her new child into the linens, offering a small vial of consecrated oil to anoint brow and scalp. Between tending to patients and assisting births, you oversee records in the infirmarian's ledger. Each entry lists names, ailments, treatments, and offerings left by grateful visitors, coins, chickens, or fine cloth. You marvel at the generosity of pilgrims who travel from afar, seeking cures for ailments found in distant shrines. You note how many arrive in hopes of St. Bartholomew's miraculous healing, only to learn that sustenance and human care are often the most potent remedies. Yet when a cripple restored to strength offers a humble thanks before departing, you understand the deeper alchemy at work. At midday, a bell tolls across the cloister, calling you to the chapter house. There, the canons gather to review hospital business, repairs needed in the bakehouse that supplies day-old loaves to patients, wood shortages for the hearths, and decisions about which families receive free care. Though you are not a cleric, your voice carries weight here. You speak of the drying mortars that need mending, the herb stocks that must be replenished, and the need for more bedding in the winter months. Your perspective as one who labors at the bedside ensures that the chapter's decisions remain grounded in the needs of the sick. Once dismissed, you return to the ward to find a new arrival, a merchant's son with a fever that burns like coals. His mother weeps in the corner, clutching a worn prayer book. You wrap the boy's hand in a cool compress and murmur a prayer for his recovery. His eyelids flutter, and you brush back damp curls from his brow, feeling an ache of shared compassion. You promise the mother frequent updates and a vial of elderflower syrup that soothes parched throats. Over the next days, your careful ministrations, gentle bathing, nourishing gruels, drafts of herb-infused water, bring the boy back from the brink, and you witness the mother's joy when he grasps her hand again. As afternoon wanes, you prepare for the ritual of the sacrament. Patients who yearn for spiritual comfort gather in rows, their thin frames leaning on wooden benches. You hand each a sprig of holy basil, blessed by the prior, and guide them through prayers, lighting candles for the departed and those still living. The chant echoes off stone walls, mingling with the distant clatter of the infirmary. You watch as trembling voices join in hymns of healing and hope, and you feel the bond of shared humanity deepen. After Vespers, you accompany the canons on their rounds outside the hospital walls. They minister to lepers in the quarantine cottages, holding lanterns to reveal pallid faces and open sores. You offer water and bread to the afflicted, knowing that only cautious kindness can cut through superstition and fear. At night's edge, when the cool air tugs at your sleeves, you move among the outcasts, wiping tears and murmuring comfort. The canon's robes swirl like dark wings in the torchlight, and you follow, bearing blankets salvaged from the hospital storeroom. Occasionally, you cross paths with the Winchester Geese quarter in Southwark, where licensed courtesans live under the bishop's protection. Though their trade differs from yours, you recognize kindred resilience in their eyes. You have delivered children of some of these women, witnessed their penance at Crossbones Cemetery, and prayed for their forgiveness. You see that survival takes many forms: stone carving, brewing, nursing, and more, and that each woman you've met has claimed her agency in a world that often denies it. Toward evening, you return inside, where the nightly vigil begins. You carry a bowl of thick gruel to those too weak to eat earlier, stirring in crushed aniseed to settle distressed stomachs. You wipe dribbles from chins, adjust pillows, and offer quiet words of encouragement. God's mercy watches over you tonight. As the candles gutter and the hospital settles into a hushed rhythm, you sit by the weakest patient's bedside, holding a damp cloth to his forehead until his breathing eases. You breathe a silent prayer, trusting that the care you've rendered will carry him through the night. Before sleep claims you, you walk once more through the herb garden, gathering rosemary for remembrance. You tie sprigs into small bundles to hang above each ward's doorway, guarding against plague and despair. You pause at the high garden gate, gazing up at the moon's silver haze illuminating the spire of the chapel. In this moment, you feel both small and infinite, a single hand among many that sustains life in the heart of a city teeming with commerce, conflict, and faith. Retiring to your modest quarters above the hospital, you set down your tools: bandage shears, scalpels smoothed by use, and your well-worn herbal tome. You extract a scrap of parchment by candlelight and add entries of treatment successes and new remedies discovered. Your notes may guide future sisters and healers who come after you, ensuring that each patient benefits from collective wisdom. You dip your quill once more, sealing your dedication to service in ink and memory. As your head touches the rough cloak that doubles as pillow, you reflect on the tapestry of your life: the dairy's dawn light, the baker's heat, the brewer's hearth, the mason's scaffold, the Guildhall's statutes, and now the healer's vigil. Each thread weaves into the next, forming a whole greater than its parts. You recognize that care, whether through bread or bandage, ale or advocacy, stone or solace, is the constant that binds community together. Sleep finally finds you as the bells toll midnight, and you drift into dreams where hands shape healing architecture out of stone and herbal poultices bloom like flowers. In the silence of the night, you rest assured that tomorrow you will rise again, ready to serve body and soul with the same strength and compassion that have guided you through every chapter of your remarkable life. As dawn's pale light drifts across the rooftops, you slip from the hush of the hospital into the narrow lanes that wind toward Aldgate. Today, your footsteps take you beyond familiar thresholds, into parts of the city where faith, finance, and survival intertwine in complex patterns. You move with purpose, guided by compassion and curiosity, eager to understand how different strands of London's tapestry fit together. Passing beneath the great arch of Aldgate, you enter a district alive with muted activity. The narrow streets are lined with shuttered storefronts where Hebrew letters decorate simple signs, announcing moneylenders and scribes at work. You pause before one such doorway, where a modest group of men and women gather around low benches, counting coins and reading contracts by torchlight. Here, in London's Jewish quarter, you witness a parallel world of commerce, one that thrives despite the precariousness of royal favor and popular suspicion. You are welcomed with polite nods. Your reputation as a fair artisan precedes you. Though Christian doctrine forbade usury among believers, Jewish lenders filled the essential gap, extending credit to merchants and craftsmen alike. You once approached these tables yourself, seeking a loan to finance the hop harvest for your brewery, and found the terms exacting but honest. Today, you bring news of another venture. You plan to expand your dairy operations to neighboring manors and require seed capital to acquire additional cows and churns. The lender listens, fingers tapping parchment, then offers you reasonable interest, secured by the promise of future butter sales. You thank him, feeling the weight of his trust, and tuck the signed pledge into your pouch. As you leave, you note the careful balance at play. The Jewish community depends on commerce for survival, yet lives always under the shadow of potential expulsion. You recall King Edward's edict of 1290, which drove so many of your neighbors beyond England's shores. Their resilience in the face of such upheaval inspires you. Even now, they rebuild, opening small shops and copying texts, preserving knowledge and tradition. In their scribal workshops, you have seen illuminated manuscripts that capture prayers and laws with exquisite artistry, reminders that culture survives in the written word. From the quiet of the lender's court, you make your way toward the southern bank of the Thames, where the river's mist drapes Southwark in silver. Here, beyond Winchester Palace's bishopric walls, another community stakes its claim on survival: the Winchester Geese, licensed courtesans whose profession flourished under the church's wary toleration. You approach the bustling thoroughfare with measured steps, aware of the stigma that follows these women, yet drawn by their fierce independence and pragmatic pragmatism. A sign of painted geese marks the entrance to a courtyard where the air is warm with fires and quiet laughter. Polite femininity meets shrewd business sense as women in layered kirtles greet patrons behind curtained doorways. You've come not to judge, but to listen. A friend, a midwife you aided in the hospital, invites you to share a pot of spiced ale in her chamber. As you sit on a carved bench, cushions soft beneath you, she pours amber liquid into earthenware cups. Steam curls toward flickering lanterns. She thanks you for your care during her recent illness and for ensuring her child's safe delivery. You sip, tasting honey and coriander, marveling at how this alley of survival accommodates so many stories. She tells you of days spent gathering at Crossbones Cemetery, where unchurched souls lie in unconsecrated ground, their names unknown, their stories erased. Here, the women come to mourn mothers and sisters who died young, victims of disease or martyrdom by narrow opportunity. They sing simple hymns beneath barren headstones and plant sprigs of rosemary, symbols of remembrance and fidelity, to claim a small corner of eternity. You listen in silence, moved by a solidarity born of shared adversity. In their resilience, you recognize a kinship. Each of you has navigated worlds that deny you full standing, yet you persist through skill, solidarity, and hope. Rising, you step back onto the street and pause at a small shrine dedicated to Saint Mary of Pity. Its painted relief shows the Virgin cradling sorrowful Christ, and you offer a silent prayer for all who suffer in ways both visible and hidden. You consider how this city holds multitudes, devout canons in cloistered hospitals, haggling traders in cramped courts, independent women forging livelihoods in the shadows. Each community sustains itself through networks of care, commerce, and covenant, even as external forces threaten to sever their bonds. Following a narrower lane, you arrive at the richly carved porch of the Mercer's Hall, a guild of silk merchants. Its members once barred you from entry, now regard you as a free man with cautious respect. Today, the hall hosts a gathering to discuss charitable assistance for widows and orphans, an initiative you helped propose during your last visit to Guildhall. Stepping inside, you feel the warm glow of braziers and the hush of assembly. Draped tapestries depict biblical scenes of compassion, a reminder that commerce need not exclude charity. You take your place among the merchants, brewers, and bankers, and present a plan. Guild members will donate a portion of their assessed dues to a fund administered jointly by Mercers and Augustinian canons, ensuring steady support for those left without means. Your proposal meets thoughtful silence, then nodding heads. A silk contractor from Calais speaks in favor. He, too, lost his wife during childbirth and knows the precariousness of a widow's lot. The fund is approved, and you feel the thrill of collective purpose, trade, faith, and civic life entwined to lift the most vulnerable. As the meeting adjourns, the hall buzzes with new alliances, pledges of cloth for hospital bedding, agreements to train apprentices, promises to host joint markets where diverse artisans might share tables and customers. Stepping back into daylight, you make your way toward the river, where a flat-bottom boat transports you across the Thames. From the deck, you watch bargemen steer against rippling currents, their muscles taut as they navigate under low bridges. You recall the river's vital role in commerce: barrels of ale, baskets of cheese, sacks of grain, all moved by water as surely as by road. Today, you bring news of the new charity fund to the Southwark bailiff, who governs trade on this bank. He welcomes your plan with guarded optimism. If the fund succeeds, he will allow women guild members to sell specialty breads and ales on specified market days beyond Winchester's license confines. You thank him, aware that this small concession signals growing recognition of women's economic contributions. After disembarking, you wander along the Thames embankment, where fishermen mend nets and children skip stones. At low tide, the muddy banks reveal rib bones from forgotten ships, tangible reminders of London's long history of trade and loss. You pause to gather a smooth stone, tucking it into your satchel as a token of this ancient lifeline. On the far bank, you thread through the bustling precinct of St. Paul's Cathedral, where guilds maintain altars and hold annual processions. En route, you pass the stately facade of the Royal Courts of Justice, recalling petitions you've filed, decisions you've influenced, and disputes you've helped settle. Legal life, you reflect, shapes commerce as surely as the market stalls themselves. Equity and mercy, when applied justly, Sustain the web of trust that underpins every transaction, from the sale of butter in the market square to the mortgage of a brewing barrel. Your wanderings bring you next to a modest garden plot behind a row of timbered houses, where you once tended thyme and sage for the hospital's kitchen and for your own cooking. The small patch still flourishes. Mint unfurls its serrated leaves, rosemary stands tall and fragrant, and calendula blooms with golden petals. You kneel to remove weeds, inhaling the herbal perfume and thinking of how healing begins in the soil. You gather sprigs of marjoram and tuck them into a linen bundle, to be used in poultices and in breads that ease stomachs. Gathering your thoughts, you follow cobbled lanes back toward home, pausing to deliver a small basket of fresh herb bundles to a Jewish midwife who taught you the healing properties of aloe and willow bark. She accepts your gift with a warm smile, and you exchange news of shared patients, stories of fevers abated and wounds mended. In her modest scriptorium, manuscripts lay open, recipes for ointments written in Hebrew and Latin, bridges between cultures and languages. You linger over a vellum page illustrating distillation equipment, marveling at the ingenuity that spans continents and centuries. Finally, you reach your own doorway, a humble dwelling that bears witness to every chapter of your life. Inside, your tools hang in neat rows: churn paddles, baking peels, brewing spoons, chisels, surgical shears, each one a faithful companion on your journey. You set down your basket of herbs and the smooth Thames stone, then take quill to parchment to record today's alliances: the loan agreement with the Jewish lender, the charity fund approved by the Mercers, the market concessions in Southwark, and the herbal exchanges that bridge faiths. By candlelight, you draft a letter to the alderman, summarizing the fund's initial pledges and requesting official recognition so it may draw donations from outside guilds as well. You copy passages from the Jewish scribes' medicinal recipes into your herbal compendium, noting adjustments for local ingredients. You inscribe plans for a joint market day next month, where butter, bread, ale, stone carvings, and medical salves will share stalls, symbolizing the unity of diverse trades and communities. When your ink runs dry, you pause to reflect on the subtle strands that bind London together. The flow of capital across religious lines, the mingling of licensed and unlicensed work, the interplay of charity and commerce, the marriage of healing and craft. In each encounter, whether negotiating credit in a Hebrew courtyard, sharing ale in a Southwark chamber, or sowing parsley in a monastery's herb garden, you have woven connections that transcend rumor and prejudice. Through your actions, walls of suspicion give way to networks of mutual reliance. Before sleep claims you, you step outside to gaze up at the night sky. Stars shimmer above vaulted rooftops, indifferent to the boundaries of creed or class below. You smile, knowing that your own life has become a bridge, spanning riverbanks, guild halls, courtyards, and chapels. In your hands, you carry faith and pragmatism, tradition and innovation, mercy and determination. You have helped forge a city where difference need not divide, and where every person, whether buttermaid, banker, courtesan, or king's subject, has a stake in the common weal. As you extinguish the candle, you feel the gentle weight of possibility settle over you. Tomorrow, dawn will bring new tasks: tending churn and dough, stoking mash tuns, carving stone, binding wounds, drafting petitions, and sharing herbs. But tonight, you rest secure in the knowledge that your work has reached beyond yourself. You have cultivated trust, nurtured compassion, and stitched together the vibrant tapestry of medieval London. In this legacy, your agency shines clear, an enduring testament to what can be built when diverse lives converge in shared purpose. As you drift off tonight, Let the steady rhythm of your daily labors, the churn of butter, the knead of dough, the bubbling mash, the steady tap of chisel, and the gentle care in healing, lull you into peaceful dreams. Imagine the warmth of hearth and heart in medieval London, where every craft wove community and purpose. If a particular scene resonated with you, share it in the comments below. We'd love to hear what part of this journey brought you comfort. Don't forget to subscribe for more soothing tales, and rest well. Good night, and may your dreams be as rich and nurturing as this story.